Warning: this film contains references to trafficking, exploitation, and suicide that may be distressing. All accounts are based on public reporting and survivor testimony. Allegations remain unproven unless confirmed by court. Many women from East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, travel to the Gulf seeking jobs in hospitality or domestic work. Over the last decade, journalists and NGOs have documented cases where recruiters promise legitimate employment, but instead funnel women into sex work or debt bondage, often under tourist or visit visas that limit legal protections. Social media has amplified both rumors, viral hashtags, and real survivor testimony. One of the viral threads, #DubaiPortaPotty, referred to online videos and allegations of degrading fetish parties. Investigative reporters later found this social media lore had real victims at its core, even if some viral claims were inaccurate or misattributed. Why this matters? Recruitment through false promises is a common trafficker technique because it exploits poverty and aspirational narratives on social media. The mixture of real exploitation and sensational online myths makes forensic investigation harder and increases the risk of misidentification, something investigators noted when viral footage was wrongly linked to particular victims during earlier coverage. According to family testimony and reporting, recruiters in Kampala and surrounding areas use social apps, WhatsApp groups, and direct messages to promise bar, hotel, or influencer-style work in Dubai. Recruits were told all travel paperwork would be handled. Some were asked to pay fees up front or accept verbal debt arrangements labeled as visa/travel loans. Several women who later became central to reporting said they were promised legitimate hospitality jobs, but upon arrival were told they owed thousands and were forced to work off debts. These mechanics, false job promises, upfront fees, and debt bondage, are consistent across survivor testimony and the later BBC reporting. Reporting indicates Kayla Birungi fell to her death from a Dubai apartment building in 2021 in the Al Burshah/Jumeirah Lakes area. The reporting identifies this cluster of neighborhoods as where several such incidents occurred. UAE police reportedly concluded at the time that her fall was a suicide. Her body was returned to Uganda. Family members have publicly expressed disbelief in the suicide finding and asked for further investigation. Relatives say Kayla had told family she planned to return home. Key factual claim: load-bearing Kayla's death was officially ruled a suicide by UAE authorities. Her family disputes that finding and say she planned to return to Uganda. That incident reignited public interest in a cluster of deaths of young East African women in Dubai and prompted journalists to examine recruitment networks and the role of alleged traffickers operating between Kampala and Dubai. Investigators and reporters began to connect dots between online recruitment patterns, debt collection practices, and the conditions women described in the UAE. Though each death occurred under different circumstances, the clustering led to deeper reporting into networks that moved women from East Africa to the Gulf. The BBC's subsequent Death in Dubai series focused on that cluster and included retrospective reporting about prior deaths, including Mona Kizz's death. 2024 to 2025, undercover reporting and naming alleged ringleaders. A multi-part BBC investigation and podcast by journalist Renato Salina, titled Death in Dubai, used undercover reporting, survivor testimony, and interviews with insiders to describe an alleged trafficking ring. The investigation identified a network that recruiters said operated by bringing women to Dubai on tourist visas and controlling them through debt, threats, surveillance, and removal of identity documents. Reporting named individuals alleged to have coordinated recruitment, movement, and local control, including a Ugandan man referred to locally as Abbey, Charles Muzigwa, and included testimony from a former operations manager who described the group's operational details. Those named allegations are investigative claims reported by the BBC and other outlets. They should be treated as allegations until verified by courts. Key factual claim: load-bearing. A BBC investigation links alleged trafficker Charles Muzigwa, nicknamed Abbey, to a network accused of recruiting Ugandan women for exploitative sex work in Dubai. 2025, September publication of Death in Dubai and renewed scrutiny. The BBC documentary and companion podcast were released in mid-September 2025. That coverage compiled survivor testimony, family interviews, and undercover reporting. It tied together the pattern of recruitment, degrading sex parties, the so-called porta-potty allegations, and several suspicious deaths in Dubai. International press, Financial Times, Middle East Eye, The New Arab, LA Bible, Sahara Reporters, and others republished or summarized the BBC findings, amplifying global attention and prompting calls for accountability from rights groups and families. Key factual claim, load-bearing. The BBC documentary explicitly connects the pattern of trafficking and exploitation to a series of suspicious deaths and brings forward survivor testimony, describing extreme, degrading acts and coercion. Patterns that emerge from the reporting. From survivor testimony and undercover interviews, several repeat patterns emerge. False job offers. Recruits are promised hospitality or influencer jobs. Debt bondage. Recruits are told they owe thousands for visas/travel. Debt is used to control movement. Coercive control. Confiscation of phones/documents. Threats. Arrange client meetings and intimidation. The BBC interviews describe flats with many women being kept in precarious conditions and forced to service clients. Degrading fetishization. The porta-potty term describes fetish events involving human waste. Survivors describe degrading and violent requests. The social media tagline became shorthand for extreme abuses that some victims reported. Clusters of suspicious deaths. Multiple falls in the same neighborhoods over several years led investigators to question whether some deaths were homicide staged or misclassified. Official rulings often labeled incidents as suicides. Families and journalists have pushed for independent forensic scrutiny. Caveat: while these patterns appear across interviews, the legal standard for naming someone as responsible for criminal acts is high. Many outlets explicitly warned that investigative allegations remain to be tested in court. What happened to Kayla? Investigative reconstruction and unanswered questions. The material available about Kayla Birungi combines official record, a fall, body repatriated, with family testimony and later investigative linkage to trafficking networks. We can reconstruct the likely sequence as follows, while noting where evidence is thin or disputed. Kayla traveled to Dubai after contact with a recruiter. Reported patterns suggest this method. Reported pattern. Direct sourcing for Kayla's pre-departure recruitment is limited in public reporting. She was present in Dubai and at some point was in a high-rise apartment in Al Burshah/neighboring district. Public reporting places multiple victims in these areas. Kayla fell from the apartment in 2021. UAE authorities classified the death as suicide and her body was later returned to Uganda. Her family dispute this classification and say she had told relatives she intended to return home. Investigative journalists later placed Kayla's death in a broader pattern of recruitment and exploitation documented in the BBC series. Interviews with insiders alleged the existence of a coordination network that delivered women to exploitative situations in Dubai. Those investigative claims are not identical to a prosecution record. They are reported allegations and testimonial accounts. Unanswered questions that remain critical. 1. Was there any independent forensic re-examination of Kayla's fall? Autopsy details beyond media reporting? Public reporting references that her body was returned and that police ruled it a suicide. Detailed autopsy records are not publicly published in the reporting I reviewed. 2. What were the precise travel and financial arrangements that brought Kayla to Dubai? Documentary reporting explains a common model, debt plus recruitment. But Kayla's personal contract/receipt trail isn't published in major outlets. 3. Are there ongoing criminal investigations or prosecutions in the UK, UAE, or Uganda, specifically naming individuals tied to Kayla's case? Several outlets referenced alleged ringleaders and possible UK connections, but public, court-level prosecutions with charges tied to specific deaths were not reported as concluded at the time of the BBC release. Kayla Birungi's story is not just about one woman's death. It is about a system of exploitation that thrives in silence. To tell her story is to break that silence. If you are affected by issues in this film, or if you have information about trafficking networks, contact the nearest law enforcement agency in your city. Go to the comment section below and share your thoughts and suggestions with us concerning this story or any related cases you know about.